Find the zeros of the following quadratic function using completing the square. What are the x-intercepts of the graph of the function? So they gave me this function, g of x equals 2x squared plus x minus 1/4. And when they ask you for the zeros, they're asking you for the values that when plugged in make the function itself equal to 0. So we start off by writing our equation by setting the function equal to 0. For the completing the square method to work, you need to have the x squared and the x term here on the left side and our constant term over to the right side. So I am moving negative 1/4 over to the right side by adding it to the right side. Okay, now that we've kind of got that set, we're now ready for the process of completing the square, which means we're going to find out what needs to be added right here to the left side to make that a perfect square. So how I do this is I do this box method, which is going to help us find that value. So I take a box and I divide it into 4 smaller boxes. In the top box, it is the coefficient of the x squared term. So in this case, our case, the number in front of the x squared is 2, and that goes in our top box. The reason why we have you check that box is because it will only work if this is a 1. So I'm going to put here another little arrow saying this must be 1. If it's not 1, we have to make it be a 1 for us to go any further in completing the square. So how we take care of this, to make that be a 1, is we're going to divide it by 2. We'll divide that front term by 2. And now the 2's will cancel and make it be a 1. But since it's an equation, if we do it to the left side, we have to do it to the right side. So everything is getting divided by 2. Gives me x squared. X divided by 2 is the same thing as 1/2 x. And then on the right side, same thing's being divided by 2. So 1/4 divided by 2 is 1/8. All right. Let's go back to the box. I think we're going to get past that first stage. Now the number in front of the x squared term is a 1. Now you go to the next box. Okay, now the next box is the coefficient of the x term. Here's our x term. The number in front is 1/4. Sorry, 1/2. So 1/2 goes in that box. And our lower left-hand box is half of the previous box. So in this case, half of 1/2, which ends up being 1/4. And then our last box is the previous box squared. So in this case, 1/4 squared. So in this is going to be 1/16 when you square the top and you square the bottom. All right, let's just go and review the box one more time because we have now completed the square. So the number in the top box is the coefficient of the x squared term. It has to be 1. The next box is the coefficient of the x term. The next box is half of the previous box, and then you square that value. So in this case, 1/16 completes the square. So that's the value that gets added to the left side and makes it a perfect square. But since it's an equation, if you add something to the left side, you have to add the same thing to the right side. Otherwise, our equation is not true anymore. So that's an important step. If you add it to the left side, we also have to add it to the right side. Okay, the completing the square is now done, but I want to show you what we have really done. Now the thing on the left side is a perfect square, meaning it's going to factor, and it's going to factor to something squared. Here's what that ends up actually factoring out to. X squared plus half x plus 1/16 is x plus 1/4 squared. And just as a little tip, it's always what this value right here in the bottom left box is. It's always x plus that box squared. And on our right side, 1/8 plus 1/16, get a common denominator. I'm going to leave that to you to do, but it ends up being 3/16 when you add those together. Here is now our equation rewritten, and now it's in the form of something squared equals a number, which we know how to solve by the square root method. Just take the square root of both sides, so we can undo the square here on the left side. Taking the square root of the right side as well. Again, square root property, though, states that there's a plus and a negative root. Important to note. Let's go ahead and simplify that down just a little bit because that square root of a fraction is the square root at the top over the square root of the bottom, which is square root of 16.4. So it does reduce a bit. And now we're down to the final step. Final step is to get the x completely isolated. So right now it's still being added with 1/4. So we're going to subtract 1/4 over to the right side, getting the x alone. X equals negative 1/4 plus or minus the square root of 3 over 4. And those are my zeros.